A proposal will move its way through the Senate shortly that will increase the price of cigarettes by $1.29 a pack. The Senate author, Carla Nelson, joins me now to explain what the purpose is behind this legislation. Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning. It's great to be here. Well, this legislation really has three aims. One, deter youth smoking. We know that youth are the most price sensitive, so increasing the cost of a pack of cigarettes, we know will deter youth smoking. Keep them from a lifelong addiction. Two, the increased revenues will pay back that school shift that was part of the compromise with the governor last year. And then revenues from when that is filled, about a little under 3 years, revenues will go to buy down a very unfriendly tax we have against job creators called the business property tax.
Okay. We'll break it down, these elements, shortly, but first let's go to the idea of trying to prevent curb teen smoking. And according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there are currently 1 in 6 teenagers smoke at this point. How effective do you think your legislation will be in curbing this?
Well, research has shown that for every 10% increase in tobacco, you get a 6.5% decrease in youth smoking and 2% decrease in adult smoking. There's been 105 tobacco increases legislation in the last few years across the nation, and the research is very clear. Youth are the most price sensitive, and as Republicans, we believe the more you tax something, the less you have of it.
Okay, and we'll get back to that in just a moment, but your legislation also puts in an estimate of about $320 million of new state revenue per biennium, and as you mentioned, those states will be distributed to repay the school shift and to reduce a property tax. But the reserve funds are expected to be paid back before school shifts. Does your legislation take this into account?
Yes, you're referring to statutorily, we're required that any reserves go to pay back the cash flow account and budget reserves. We're about $5 million now, if the forecast holds, from paying back those budget reserves. The third thing would be the school shift, and certainly my legislation would preempt in that it's not using surplus funds, it's actually funds directly from the cigarette tax.
Okay. Your financial estimate, is it based on, I'm curious, is it based on the current number of smokers? And if so, does it take into account any potential decrease as well, which would then affect, obviously, the bottom line?
Yes, it does. We do know that as you increase the cost, and the idea is that there would be less people smoking, less tobacco use. So I believe it does. It's called an elasticity factor, and that is included in the estimate. All
right, Senator, last year during budget negotiations, the governor offered up a similar proposal, $1 per pack, to try to help pay for a variety of things. Speaker Kurt Zellers called that proposal, quote, very disappointing and a step backwards. And he has said that taxes are just not, new taxes are a deal breaker for his caucus. He has said that in the past. What kind of support do you think you can gain with this proposal now?
Well, it's a very bipartisan proposal. I have Republican support. I anticipate Democrat support as well. Not all of us were part of those final budget negotiations. Those were between about 4 or 5 people. I can tell you that many of us felt that the school shift that took place under our watch, $700 million, was not the best way to go. I personally find it preferable to increase tax on something as cigarettes, which are damaging to our youth, increasing health care costs. We have about $3 billion of health care costs in Minnesota due to smoking. I would prefer that we increase that cost rather than taking money from our schools and taxing our job creators.
What are you hearing from both constituents and other members at this point?
Actually, it's been a very mixed, but a lot of support, a lot of great support, called courageous and needed. It's really, I think, a part of smarter tax policy.
Okay, Senator, we will track your legislation, of course, throughout session. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be here.